Chapter 5. The Next Crash. My ideas have undergone a process of emergence by emergency. When they are needed badly enough, they are accepted. R. Buckminster Fuller. In 2002, applying what Dr. Fuller taught me about predicting the future, Rich Dad's Prophecy, was published. The book was a combination of Rich Dad's warning and Bucky's lesson from Garage of Giants. Basically, both men were saying the rich were playing games with the money, and a monstrous day of reckoning was approaching. They believed the game of stealing our wealth was spinning out of control, and that even the rich could not prevent the inevitable. In 2002, Rich Dad's prophecy predicted a giant stock market crash that would occur sometime that year, 2016. The book also predicted that a secondary crash would occur prior to the giant crash of 2016. When you look at the graph of the Dow, you can decide for yourself if the crash predicted in Rich Dad's prophecy is possible. These are the key dates. Number one, I began writing Rich Dad's prophecy in 1998. Number two, Rich Dad's prophecy is published in 2002. Number three, prophecy predicts a secondary crash prior to the crash of 2016. And that crash occurred in 2007. Rich Dad's prophecy predicts the giant crash will occur around 2016. Question: do you think a 2016 crash will occur? Answer: I would encourage you look at the chart and make your own decision. The reason Fuller is considered one of the world's greatest futurists is because he simply looked at the past to predict the future. You can do the same thing with this chart. While you are predicting the future, take a look at what The Economist magazine calls one of the biggest crashes in history: the crash of 1929. If the giant crash of 1929 led to the Great Depression, which lasted 25 years, how long will the new depression last? If Rich Dad's prophecies predictions come true, what does your crystal ball say? Question: let's say you're right. What does all this mean to me? Answer: if the prophecy is true, it means that the cash heist is becoming the giant cash heist. If Fuller and Rich Dad are correct, the next group to lose their wealth will be the rich who hold their wealth in the stock market. 1971. The
Once
poor
again,
lost their wealth
look
when
at the
President
past and you'll
Nixon
see the
took
future.
the dollar off the gold standard. The poor lost because the money they worked for became worth less and less. When they earned more money, they paid higher taxes. As the money they worked for loses value, prices keep going up. The harder the poor work, the farther behind they fall. Today, in 2014, all across the world, the working poor are demanding a living wage. Unfortunately, even if the minimum wage is increased, the poor will continue to be poor because they work for money that is no longer money. 2007. Those in the middle class lost their biggest assets, their homes. For years, the middle class lived well, thanks to their credit cards. When the value of their homes increased, they would take out a home equity loan and pay off their credit card debt. In 2014, Housing prices remained low and mortgage, credit card debt, and student loan debt hang like an albatross around their necks. The heist took place via their homes drop in value. 2016. If the predictions in Rich Dad's prophecy come true, many of the rich whose wealth is in the stock market wipe out, will be wiped out. Their wealth will be stolen in the next giant stock market crash. In 2007, as Rich Dad's prophecy predicted, a massive stock market crash occurred. It was the secondary crash, the crash prior to the giant crash. A massive economic emergency wiped out millions of people. Today, the world remains in an economic emergency. The poor get poorer, the middle class is shrinking, and millions of highly educated young people cannot find jobs. For others, the 2007 economic emergency was the best thing that ever happened to them. They emerged from the emergency richer, stronger, and more optimistic about the future. The question is, will the coming economic emergency be the best or worst thing for you? According to Bucky Fuller, the word emergency is another very powerful word, but a word that's often misused and misunderstood. Oh, he said the base word within emergency is emerge, a generalized principle, Fuller said. Out of emergency, new things, people, and societies emerged. For those looking for a second chance in life, the good news is that many people do emerge from emergency stronger, better, and richer. As always, though there's a second side to this coin, the bad news is not all people emerge from financial emergencies. Many are wiped out. How will you emerge from this coming economic emergency? A growing emergency. Fuller believed humanity was facing more than just a run of the mill emergency. He believed humans were at the edge of a massive emergency. He believed humanity was on the edge of an evolutionary emergency. Most important, he believed we still had the option to choose to emerge as a new form of humanity or perish. He was concerned that our leaders were not addressing these emergencies. Rather than address the emergencies facing them, our leaders continued to sweep the problems under the rug. They would kick the can down the road, pushing the problem onto the plates of the next generation. Ignoring today's emergency is setting the stage for giant emergencies known as calamities, disasters, or collapses. Fuller believed humans have been focused on money, power, and weapons development for too long. He believed it was time to change. Fuller believed it was time for all of us to make a conscious shift and put focus on what he called living green than killing green. If we did not make that shift, Fuller believed humans would become extinct, more like dinosaurs. Cooperate or compete. One step in this evolutionary process would require that humans learn to be cooperative rather than competitive. Humans are naturally competitive. Since the days of cavemen, humans learned to survive by fighting, by being at war with other humans. Today, humans continue to invest trillions of dollars into war and weapons. Why millions of people go to sleep hungry? Fuller's solution intrigued me as I sat in the audience listening to him. I always wondered how many of our global emergencies could be solved if only we cooperated rather than competed with one another. It sounded simple. Yet, from personal experience, I knew that getting humans to compete was much easier than getting them to cooperate. As a young boy, I remember my rich dad saying, I don't need competition. Every day, my employees come to work and we fight amongst ourselves. My hardest job is getting my own workers to cooperate. It seems each person wants his or her own turf, their own rules, their way of doing things, and especially their own opinion. If we cooperated more and competed less internally, everyone would make more money. Listening to Fuller, I realized why it would take global emergencies for humans to cooperate. Until there was a true emergency, it was human nature to compete, or even worse, do nothing. Fuller's concern was that the coming emergencies would be bigger than our abilities. Even if we did finally choose to cooperate. Competing for grades. As Fuller spoke, I realized schools taught students to compete as opposed to cooperate. In school, I often wanted to cooperate, but that's often called cheating. In many ways, the classroom is not much different than a Neanderthal man's cave. In the cave known as a classroom, young kids are taught to compete against their classmates if they want good grades. Being an A student does not necessarily mean the student is smarter. An A student means you won, you beat your classmates. It is no different from being the bully in the schoolyard, beating up on weaker classmates. Small wonder that many kids do not like school. If the A student cooperates and helps their classmates, they are thrown out of school for cheating. Parents encourage their primitive academic behavior. Parents encourage this primitive academic behavior. They want their young, club wielding Neanderthal to beat the brains out of his or her classmates. Although few will admit it, they want to make sure their child gets the good grade, good job, and high pay. Grades in many ways are about money. After a child graduates at the top of the class, the next cave the A student enters is the corporate world. Once hired, the young executive's job is to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder, aka bid on your peers. They don't dare cooperate because there is only one seat at the top and they want to make sure that seat has their name on it. If businesses cooperate too closely, it can be called a monopoly. Or if it is less formal but still anti-competitive, it can be collusion, both of which are often illegal. In the world of politics, cooperation could be considered treason. Republicans do not dare cooperate with Democrats. In many cases, if a politician reaches across the aisle, Their own party cuts off their arm. This is why there is so much gridlock versus real progress in government. Nothing gets done, and the emergencies grow into disasters. As Fuller stated, humanity's next evolutionary challenge is to learn to cooperate and solve our global problems. The problem is, humans only know how to compete. We have yet to really learn to cooperate. Learning to cooperate would be evolutionary. Question. But can a person learn in a classroom where students cooperate rather than compete? Answer. Sure. Question. Can you give me an example? Answer. Sure. I'll give you two personal examples. Number one, cooperation is essential in team sports. As they say, there is no I in team, but there is an I in win. Too many students leave school understanding the I in win rather than the we win in a team. In team sports, the team supports each individual to be the best they can, or the team doesn't win. In the classroom, the individual student does not want others to be the best they can be. The individual wants to be the best. Number two, in the Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, OCS, young officer candidates are evaluated not on how many times their teams win, but how well their team cooperates as a team. On some evaluations, winning or losing is not even mentioned. In other words, winning is not as important as cooperating in the Marine Corps. Marines know that if they cooperate, they win. This is why Marines believe they are the best branch of service. And although Marines believe they are the best of all the branches of service, no Marine believes he or she is better than another Marine. Regardless of rank, Marines are taught to respect and value other Marines. This is why it's said, once a Marine, always a Marine. The bond between Marines are spiritual, not financial. Is spiritual, not financial. So to answer your question, can you learn in a cooperative environment? The answer is yes. But that's not always true in the academic classroom. The world of academic is a world of kill or be killed, a world of survival of the fittest, a world of winners and losers, a world of I'm smart and you're not, a world of I win, not we win, and a world where cooperating is cheating. Question. Are you saying I should start cooperating? Answer. Not exactly. Again, the generalized principle is unity is plural. At minimum, two. The Marine Corps train each Marine to be strong as an individual and as a team member. When it comes to money, many individuals are weak individually, so no one wants them on the financial team. In the world of money, the richest people in the world operate on teams. Yet, most people operate as individuals. That's why most people are losers in the game of money. To maximize your opportunity for a second chance, you have to get strong individually as well as learn to cooperate on a team. The big problem. The problem is that our inability to cooperate is causing our emergencies to grow into giants. Global emergencies. Fuller was concerned that these growing emergencies, if not addressed now, would overwhelm us and become bigger crises than humans could handle. The following are some of the emergencies he felt were growing into giant disasters. Number one, environmental emergencies. As far back as the 1950s and 60s, Fuller warned of the effects of global warming. Today, rather than cooperate to solve our environmental problems, many leaders deny their environmental problems. Whether you believe in global warming theories or not, the fact remains that our polar ice caps are melting, seas are rising, soil runoff is polluting our oceans, and fish that feed billions around the world are being depleted. Whether a person believes in global warming or not, the facts are that our weather is becoming more violent. In recent years, there have been horrific hurricanes like Katrina and Sandy, supersized tornadoes ripping across the Midwest, and ice storms shutting down southern U.S. cities, including New Orleans and Atlanta. Around the world, there is severe drought in some areas as well as massive flooding in other areas. This state of emergency is growing. The second is nuclear emergencies. In the 1950s and 60s, Fuller spoke about the atomic energy. He said that the closest God wanted humans to be to atomic energy was 93 million miles, the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Although nuclear power companies claim that nuclear power is clean energy, what they do not say is that nuclear waste is lethal. Today, nuclear waste is stored in deep underground caverns. The problem with nuclear waste is it takes hundreds of thousands of years to become inert or incapable of causing further damage. It also takes billions in taxpayers' dollars to safely store that toxic waste. In 2012, the tsunami that hit Japan spread atomic waste around the world via ocean currents. The effect of that single emergency will be with us for thousands of years. The third is military emergencies. In the 1970s and 80s, during the height of the Cold War, Fuller said, either war is obsolete or we are. He meant human intelligence had developed weapons of mass destruction so severe that if they were a nuclear war, only cockroaches would survive. There would be no winners and losers. In the next war, there will only be losers. To Bucky, the idea that war was obsolete was a sign from the Great Spirit that humans needed to change direction, to evolve, to cooperate, rather than fight. Unfortunately, humans killing other humans continues. Today, terrorists have the power to take on the most powerful militaries in the world. Today, terrorists use cell phones to incite and recruit new soldiers to fight, use our airliners as weapons, and have access to information on how to build suitcase size nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons. The United States spends trillions on its military, yet a simple, inexpensive, dirty bomb detonated in New York, London, Tokyo, or Beijing could cripple the world economy. In 1972, I saw one of my squadron mates shot down by a Chinese made SA 7, a heat seeking shoulder fired rocket known as the Strela. The Viet Cong soldier who fired the rockets did not need much training. All he did was point and pull the trigger, and the rocket did the rest, taking down a multi-million-dollar CH 53 Jolly Green Giant helicopter and killing 62 Marines. In 2014, a Malaysian passenger jet was shot down with the same weapon. Today, the United States spends trillions on military training and new weapons. At the same time, an untrained terrorist with a $10,000 heat seeking rocket fired at an airliner has the power to cripple, if not bring down, the world economy. Unfortunately, fighting terrorism is not like fighting a conventional war, a war like the World War II. We learned that lesson the hard way in Vietnam. Terrorists do not wear uniforms, and they do not have to obey the rules of engagement of traditional war. Terrorists do not have factories, harbors, airfields, or towns that can be destroyed. They win because they have little to lose. Terrorists win because they can fight anywhere, everywhere, and forever. When we fight terrorism, we fight an ideology, not a country. Many believe that the more we focus on killing terrorists, the more terrorists we create. Rather than evolving, getting the mass that war is obsolete. We continue to fight. This is why the emergency of terrorism grows. The next is pandemic emergency. Centuries ago, there was the plague spread by fleas and rats, and today we have Ebola spread by airliners. Next is economic emergency. Today, wars are fought with money, which is causing a massive economic emergency. Tragically, wars fought with money are often wars against innocent people, both young and old, rather than armed terrorists. Today, billions of people live in day to day economic emergency. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In 1943, Abraham Maslow, an American psychologist born in 1908, presented his paper on a theory of human motivation in Psychological Review. Although Maslow did not present his concepts as a triangle, today his hierarchy of need is often represented as one. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, pictured below, explains how economic emergencies affect our lives. Maslow studied what he called exemplary people such as Albert Einstein, Jane Addams, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Frederick Douglass. According to Wikipedia, he explained his rationale for choosing his subject by stating: the study of crippled, stunted, immature, and unhealthy specimens can yield only cripple psychology, can yield only a cripple psychology and a cripple philosophy. It is important to note that The two base levels of the triangle, psychological or survival, and safety, affect the three top levels of love or belonging, esteem, and self actualization. Real life collapse. In 1973, I returned home to Hawaii from Vietnam to find my poor dad unemployed. He had resigned from his post as superintendent of education to run for lieutenant governor as a Republican against his boss. The governor, a Democrat, after losing the election, the governor blacklisted my dad from future employment in state government. To survive, he withdrew his life saving, cashed in his retirement savings, and bought a national ice cream franchise. Within a year, his business failed, and my dad was an unemployed and out of money PhD. It was painful to watch Maslow's triangle collapse on my dad. When his first two levels of needs, psychological, which means survival, and safety, began to crumble, the rest of his hierarchy collapsed on top of him. My mom passed away soon after he lost the election. 2 years later, my dad remarried, but was soon divorced. In his early 50s, as much as his children attempted to comfort him, he was alone with his grief, without much love or sense of belonging. A proud and confident man most of his life, the loss of the election, his wife, his title, his power, and his job caused the collapse of his self esteem, preventing him from standing up, dusting himself up, and going back into the world. Rather than become self actualized, he sat at home, watching television, drinking, an angry and bitter man who was resentful of his friends who were more successful. When you look at the top of Maslow's triangle, you see the word morality. I'm thankful that my dad never lost his morality. He had many questionable offers from people who wanted to use his past reputation and success, but he refused. He chose to struggle financially rather than sell his morality. Many people do sell their morality when the base level of survival and security are weakened. Many people turn to crime, selling drugs or sex, stealing, lying, and cheating. When people are desperate, frivolous, lawsuits increase and ambulance chasing attorneys get rich. In 1973, I saw the future, not the future of my dad's generation, but of my generation and that of our kids. Rather than become productive and self reliant, more and more people seem to believe they are entitled to government support. Their financial plan is to win the lottery or hope for an accident so they can sue and live off the settlement. When survival and security are weakened, a moral, ethical, and legal civilized society is the first casualty. In my opinion, we are in an economic emergency. The questions are: who will emerge from this economic emergency and who will not? Who will fortify their self esteem, become self actualized, and take a second chance at money and life? Question: what did Maslow mean by self actualization? Answer: a self actualized person is unstoppable. That is why he studied great people like Albert Einstein, Jane Addams, Eleanor Roosevelt, And Frederick Douglass. He did not study the mentally ill or neurotic people. A self actualized person will keep going no matter what obstacles are put in their way. Question. So, a self actualized person does not need to be motivated? Answer. Exactly. Today, when it comes to money, career, or finances, most people need to be motivated. They want incentives. They'll ask, how much will you pay me if I work for you? And what is my bonus? When will I receive a pay raise? And what are my benefits? Many need praise, which means if you stroke my self esteem, I will work harder. Many also say to themselves, if you do not make me feel good, I'll quit. I'll make your life miserable at work. I'll gossip and spread rumors. And if you really upset me, I'll take you to court and sue you for abuse or sexual harassment. Others seek punishment. Many only get back to work when counseled or reprimanded. Many need performance reviews to perform. Doesn't this start at home? I believe it does. I hear many parents say, I give my child $100 for every A they receive on their report card. Others say, I pay my child to read a book, or I pay my child to do chores around the house. To me, this is training a child to work for money. This is why my rich dad refused to pay his son and me. He said, paying a child to work is training a child to be an employee. Rich dad was training his son and me to be entrepreneurs, self actuated boys who would grow up to build assets that produce income and created jobs. He was not willing to teach us to grow up to be adults who worked for money, job security, and benefits. He said, if that is what you want to do when you grow up, then go to school, graduate, and work for people like me. Fame, success, and money versus greatness. Simply said, fame, success, and money can be achieved by motivation, inspiration, intimidation, and compensation. For most people, being famous, successful, and rich are enough, but these achievements are not the same as greatness. According to Maslow, greatness can only be achieved by self actualization. When you are self actualized, you become unstoppable. Even if you do not have money, a good job, a great education, professional credentials, good health, or a roof over your head. When considering your second chance, you may want to ask yourself, what would cause me to be self actuated? If you're self actuated, if you are self actuated, you have a better chance of emerging stronger from from the coming emergencies. The top of the pyramid. Always remember, at the top of Maslow's pyramid is the word morality. For many people, in their quest for fame, success, and money, the first casualty is their morality. That is why many ambitious and successful people fail to achieve greatness. For many people, the desire for fame, success, and money is so strong that they are willing to do whatever it takes, including sacrificing their values and morals. We all know people like this. You may see them on TV, read about them in the paper, walk with them. You may even go to the same church as they do. In the real world, there are many great people who never achieve fame, success, and money. They are the billions of unsung heroes, people like my poor dad, who refused to sell their morality, no matter how tough their life became. In your second chance, I hope you would choose to be one of these great people. Aspire to be aspire to greatness, even if you do not achieve fame, success, and money. The world needs more great people. People who operate from we win rather than I win. People who live by a strong moral code. A greatness quiz. Ask yourself these questions. Question: who do you know who has fame but is not a great person? Question: who do you know who has success but is not a great person? Question: who do you know who is rich but is not a great person? Question: who do you know is great but may not be famous, successful, or rich? Question: have you told this great person that they are great and what they do that makes them great? Wouldn't it be great if you got in touch with them and let them know why you think they're a great person? And be sure to tell them what specifically they do that you believe makes them great. To just say you're great is nice, but lacks clarity and power. If you personally acknowledge others for their greatness, the greatness is in both of you increases. If one great person acknowledged 10 other great people, and those 10 great people acknowledge 10 others, the power of Maslow's self actualized greatness would spread around the world. If greatness, rather than despair, spreads around the world, we the people will have the power to solve the coming emergencies rather than wait for our leaders to solve them. Of course, the I win people won't like it, but it's time for them to step aside and let the world win. The next economic emergency. In the coming economic emergency, millions of people who are affluent today are likely to experience the collapse of their personal Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In previous chapters, I wrote about the economic emergency the United States and most of the world are facing. In this next session, I'll offer specifics on the looming economic emergency, who I believe will be the next casualties and why. The poor. In 1971, the poor lost the war on poverty when President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. When banks and the government print money, taxes, inflation, and poverty go up. Unfortunately, many of these people will not emerge from their economic emergency. The middle class. In 2007, the middle class lost the war on the middle class when millions lost their jobs, homes, and retirement savings. On April 22nd, 2014, the front page headline of the New York Times stated, "The American middle class is no longer the world's richest." The article stated that the middle class in Canada is now earning more than the middle class in America, and that the poor in much of Europe earn more than the poor in America. As of 2014, few middle class Americans have emerged from the last economic emergency. Unemployment runs high among the educated young, as well as the experienced and educated old workers. It is estimated that two-thirds of the unemployed who have found jobs earn less than they did prior to the 2007 subprime mortgage crash. What's next? In 2002, Rich Dad's Prophecy was published. It was a combination of Rich Dad's lesson on government, money and banking, and Bucky Fuller's lesson on grunge, generalized principle and progosti- prognostication and how to predict the future. Rich Dad's Prophecy predicted the biggest stock market crash in world history sometime at or around the year 2016. As you might guess, Wall Street's media machine attacked the vengeance, doing their best to discredit the book and me. Smart Money, Money Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal were not kind to my rich dad's prophecy, even though the predicted crash was more than a decade away. Question: why do you think that the media went on the attack? Answer: Rich Dad's prophecy is about the flaws in the 401k retirement plans that millions of workers contribute to every month. These flaws are among the reasons my dad predicted that the biggest stock market crash in history would hit around the year 2016. It's my opinion that the smart money reporter felt she needed to discredit my book and me because the media outlets needed to protect your advertisers, who, by the way, are a part of grunge. I understand protecting your advertisers, but why lie? Why sell your morality for money? The Wall Street Journal and Money Magazine countered Rich Dad's prophecy without lying. I respect and expected that response. There are always two sides and an edge to every coin. The Wall Street Journal and Money Magazine presented their sides. I surely did not expect them to agree with Rich Dad, my book, or me. Question: who is going to be right? Answer: I'm afraid Rich Dad and Bucky Fuller are already right. As I've stated often over the past 10 years, the job of a prophet is to be wrong. Question: why be wrong? Answer: prophets sound warnings. They do not want to be right. They want people to take action, prepare, and make changes before the prophecy comes true. Question: has that happened? Answer: I'm afraid not. Grunge and our government leaders have only made the coming emergency bigger and the looming prophecy more destructive. Question: how accurate is Rich Dad's prophecy? Answer: I will show you a chart you've seen before and let you decide for yourself. Point number one: note the arrow pointing to the giant stock market crash in 1929. Many people today, even the Economics magazine, have gone on record saying the 1929 crash was one of the biggest crashes in history. Point two: the Great Depression actually lasted 25 years. Point three: note the arrow pointing to 1997 when Rich Dad, Poor Dad was published, stating your house is not an asset. Point four: note the arrow pointing to 2002, the date which that prophecy was published. Point five: note the arrow pointing to 2007, the October peak of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. In Rich Dad's prophecy, I clearly stated there would be one more giant crash before the monster crash in 2016. The 2007 crash followed that prediction. The 2007 crash wiped out millions of homeowners, many finding out the hard way that their house is not assets. It's not an asset. A warning statement first presented in Rich Dad Poor Dad. That book was published 10 years earlier in 1997. The 2007 crash wiped out the middle class and many middle class millionaires next door. Point 6. Note the arrow pointing to 2016, the date of the rich dad's prophecy prediction for the mother of all crashes. Question: will the prophecy come true? Who knows? I hope not.